Women's tennis comes out and dominates against Kansas and Kansas State. Baseball improves in Big 12 play with 2 out of 3 wins against TCU. The men's and women's basketball NCAA tournaments both finished out with some fireworks, and the MLB is finally back at full force despite a late start. All of this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Tommy Yarrish. We have a packed show for you today. Let's get right into it. I'm now lucky to be joined by our women's tennis analyst, Tate Miller. Tate, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Number 4 UT women's tennis played Kansas last Friday and looked as dominant as ever, earning that 4 spot. Tell us, what gave the Longhorns the edge over the Jayhawks?
Well, Tommy, something pretty spectacular happened to the Longhorns. A 7-0 winning sweep against the number 25 Kansas Jayhawks last Friday afternoon at the Texas Tennis Center. Texas opened with a 1-0 lead by securing the doubles point from the Jayhawks. Sophomores Charlotte Chavatipon and Kylie Collins earned a 6-2 win, followed by the freshman pair Vivian Ovrutsky and Sabina Zaynalova, who clinched the doubles point with a 6-4 victory. Chavatipon began singles actions with a dominant 6-0, 6-1 win on court 4 to move to 10-7 in dual match singles play this season. Ovrutsky followed with a 6-0, 6-3 victory on court 5 to improve in 9-5 in dual match singles action this spring. Allura Zamaripa clinched the overall victory for the Longhorns with a 6-0, 6-4 win on court 6 against Tiffany Lagarde. After blanking Lagarde in the opening set, Zamaripa faced a 4-3 deficit in the second set. Zamaripa broke Lagarde to even the set, held serve, and broke Lagarde again on a deuce point to secure the victory and move to 6-1 in dual match singles play this year. Playing out the remaining 3 singles matches to completion, number 68 Zaynalova posted a 6-4, 6-2 victory on court 3. Number 38 Collins added a 6-1, 3-6, 7-5 win on court 2. And number 3 Peyton Stearns finalized the sweep with a 7-6, 7-6 victory on court 1.
Obviously, winning 7-0 is impressive, and Texas has done a really good job winning that doubles point to start off, and they just continued keeping that momentum moving on to Sunday's match against Kansas State. How did the Longhorns emerge victorious against the Wildcats?
Well, Tommy, Texas did it again, this time against number 52 Kansas State Wildcats last Sunday at the Texas Tennis Center with a 4-0 sweep. Texas grabbed a 1-0 advantage by winning the doubles point for the 7th straight and 10th time in its last 11 matches. The pair of sophomores Charlotte Chavatipon and Kylie Collins claimed a 6-0 victory on court 2. Chavatipon and Collins improved to 10-2 in doubles overall this season, including a 5-0 mark in dual match action. The freshman duo of Vivian Ovrutsky and Sabina Zaynalova clinched the doubles point with a 6-1 win on court 3. Sophomore number 3 Peyton Stearns opened singles action with an impressive 6-1, 6-2 victory on court 1. Tied at 1-1 in her opening set, Stearns won 11 of the next 13 games to close out the win and improve to 19-1 overall in singles this year, including a 16-1 mark in dual match action. Chavatipon followed with a 6-2, 6-1 win on court 4, and number 38 Collins closed out the overall victory with a 6-4, 6-3 win on court 2. Tied at 4-4 in her opening set, Collins broke through and then held serve to post a 6-4 first set win. Trailing 3-2 in the second set, Collins won 4 straight games to finish off her victory and improved to 23-8 overall in singles this season, including an 11-5 record in dual match play. The remaining 3 matches were closed once Collins had won her match, but the Longhorns were leading in all of those remaining.
So 2 back-to-back really strong performances from this number 4 ranked team. They're on a roll. What is up next for the Longhorns, and who is a player that audiences should be sure to take note of going forward?
Well, the Longhorns play their final regular season contest of the year at number 21 Baylor on Saturday, April 16th. The first serve is set for 2 p.m. Central at the Hurd Tennis Center in Waco. After that contest, it's on to the Big 12 championships, where Texas ranks 7-1, tied with Oklahoma State and just behind 8-0 Oklahoma. The championships will take place over 3 days, the 22nd through the 24th, all taking place up in Fort Worth, where the matches have yet to be determined. As for who stands out, Peyton Stearns is my pick, as she is ranked number 3 nationally in women's tennis. Her singles performance against Kansas and Kansas State shows her dominance on the court. She has been nominated as a Big 12 Player of the Week numerous times, so I expect big things from her, not just in the Baylor game, but in the Big 12 championships and beyond.
Stearns has surely made it look easy so far throughout the season, as has Texas in most instances. Thank you, as always, for joining us tonight, Tate. When we return on College Press Box, Texas baseball gets above 500 in Big 12 play with a series win over TCU. We'll cover it after the break. Welcome back to College Press Box. The Longhorns baseball team took home their second straight Big 12 series win against TCU this past weekend, winning the first and third games by a combined score of 9-3. Let's go to the dish for the highlights. We'll start off in the first game of the series. Pete Hansen starting on the mound for Texas in Game 1. He comes out dealing with 4 strikeouts and 5 at-bats. That's his fourth right there on the top of the second. Next at-bat. Hansen's defense has his back. An awkward throw over to first, handled well by Ivan Melendez. He makes the acrobatic tag to get out of the inning. Moving to the bottom of the fourth. One on for Murphy Steely. He's been hitting incredibly well. Sends it in between the gap. That advances Douglas Hodo over to third base. Enter Silas Ardwan, the catcher. Going to ground out to the shortstop, but he brings in the first run of the inning for Texas. That gives the Longhorns the first lead of the night. Bottom of the seventh now. Not much movement on the scoreboard, but Trey Faltini shows off his movement along the bags and steals third to get into scoring position. Mitchell Daly going to come up next after this. He's been playing incredibly well as well, much like Murphy Steely. Going to slap one to the shortstop. That forces the out at second, brings in Faltini to make this a 2-0 ball game. Top of the ninth now with 2 outs for Hansen. A career night. He's going to have 12 strikeouts, just 1 short of his career high, and Texas wins it just 2-0. A lot more action-packed in this second game. We'll start off with the Horned Frogs. They're coming out swinging. First at-bat of the day, and Elijah Nunez reaches after Daly can't make this play at first. Next at-bat for TCU, Braden Taylor hits one out into the corner along the third baseline. Runners at the corners now for the Horned Frogs. Longhorns going to let up 1 run but get 2 outs and narrow the bases down to 1 runner at third, and then TCU makes it 2-0 here off the bat of Tommy Sacco. So the Horned Frogs taking that loss to heart and coming back out in this second game and playing well. They grab 1 more in the first and go up 3, and then Mr. Reliable himself, Murphy Steely, cuts the deficit with a solo shot to left field. It's 3-1. Horned Frogs now. The momentum wouldn't work in Texas's favor much longer, as Braden Taylor crushes a 3-run homer into left center to double the TCU lead, and the Horned Frogs take a commanding 6-1 lead. Moving into the bottom of the fourth now. Longhorns not out of it just yet. In comes Dylan Campbell. He shoots a 2-run homer to make this a 2-run game. Bottom of the ninth now. It's Campbell once again. Texas going to be down by 3, and it's the same result for the sophomore. Right back to a 2-run game we go. 7-5 TCU. Still bottom of the ninth. Longhorns hanging around the whole night, and now the tying run is at the plate in Ivan Melendez, but he grounds out into a double play to end the game. TCU evens the series at 1 apiece with a 7-5 win. Third and final game of the series now, and the Horned Frogs going to start out hot again. Curtis Byrne gets them started in the second with an RBI double. Horned Frogs go up 1-0. Moving into the bottom of the third, Ivan Melendez up at the plate. He flips the bat on here, and you know what that means. Couldn't get it the homer the other night, but now he powers a 2-run shot to put Texas ahead 2-1. In the fourth now, this Texas team doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but there's going to be one right here as the pitch gets away from Silas Ardwan. Runner comes home from third. Another advances to second. That evens it at 2 apiece. Top of the fifth now. 2 away for Lucas Gordon. He throws a beautiful third strike along the corner for the third out, and he is fired up about it. Texas fans waving goodbye to the Horned Frogs. Not out of it just yet. We're only in the top of the 5th. Bottom of the 7th now. Douglas Hoda blasts a 2-run double to bring in Trey Faltini, and the Texas bats are coming alive here late as they go up 4-2. Same inning, Ivan Melendez fights off an 0-2 count with 2 outs and gets the RBI single, brings in Hodo, and Texas now goes up by 3. Longhorns end up bringing in 2 more runs. TCU adds 1, and Coy Cobb comes into the game to close things out for Texas. They get their 5th Big 12 win of the season. They face off against Stephen F. Austin Tuesday night before traveling to Manhattan for their series against Kansas State, a series which they swept just a year ago. And now with that, we welcome in our baseball analyst, Clark Dalton. Excuse me. Thank you for joining us, Clark.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, sorry I botched your name, by the way, man. I've said it 100 times. I can't believe it.
That's all good.
After this weekend, it's back-to-back Big 12 series wins for Texas over key opponents in Oklahoma, now TCU. This time around, it's a ranked TCU team. Oklahoma wasn't ranked in that series over in Arlington. What were the keys for this series this time around?
I think it's ironic because it was really similar to the Oklahoma series because Game 3 became pivotal because you had that 1-1 tie. Same thing with Oklahoma. You lose Game 2, and then in Game 3, the chips are down, but you manage to find a way to come back. And I think that's going to be important later on in the season because you're going to have to rally if you want to win those games in Omaha. And one thing that was kind of cool is the gradual improvement you saw in their hitting. In the first game, they hit the ball only 4 times. By Game 3, that number increased to 12. So it's important to build that confidence down the road to know you can compete with the best teams in the Big 12. And if you do get in a situation where you're down, you don't necessarily freak out. You can handle it and say, hey, guys, we can get back in this.
No, absolutely. And at the beginning of the year with Tanner Witt going down, it's safe to say that there was a lot of question marks about this Texas bullpen. You know, their hitting was never really in question, but ever since then it's been a slippery slope for the Longhorns. Are you concerned with this pitching crew long term?
A little bit. I don't want to necessarily throw anybody under the bus because Pete Hansen has been awesome. Tristan Stevens is a very talented player, and you obviously saw the highlights with Lucas Gordon, but I am a little bit worried about this team's bullpen because aside from those 3, there's a lack of depth at starting pitching because you're throwing in a lot of pitchers who are young and inexperienced, and you saw that happen in Game 2. They allowed 14 hits, and there were no fielding errors. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be too critical, but that's not going to be something you want to see in the NCAA tournament when you're competing against better teams. So they need to develop one more top-tier arm quickly, and I think they can do that if they get more players in and start to build their confidence just a little bit, but I think it is something they do need to work on.
I agree that I think Hansen showed after this week, and he is their ace guy with Witt being out. So another question mark is a big question that everyone is really waiting to have answered. Can the Longhorns make it? If so, how will they make it to Omaha for the College World Series?
You know, Tommy, it's kind of funny because when you look at this team on paper, they lead the Big 12 in pitching, they lead the Big 12 in hitting. They're 5th in the conference right now. So that's one thing that doesn't make sense because the talent level is still the same. They brought everybody back from last year. Austin Todd is healthy again as well. Ivan Melendez is great. Trey looks great. Mitchell Daly stepping up. But for some reason, there's something about this team this year where I think they're just as talented, but they're missing that edge. And the reason they had that sort of competitive fire at the beginning of the season last year and what carried them to the College World Series was they felt a little disrespected after the 0-3 start when everybody said, oh, Texas baseball is not back. This is not a College World Series team. And they sort of used that as sort of a source of anger throughout the season, I think, to show everybody, no, we do belong in the conversation with elite teams. I think a little bit this year with the team being so talented and getting off to a better start that they built a great confidence level, but maybe lost some of that competitive fire that we saw last year at the end of the year that really carried them into Omaha. But I think right now, with maybe being kind of behind in the Big 12 and needing to climb back up in the standings, specifically against Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, that they can find it again. And I think that's the way they're going to get back to the College World Series. I do think they need to be a top 3 team in the Big 12 by the end of the season.
Well, like you mentioned, there's still a lot of games to be played in Big 12 play. So plenty of time for this team to sort of find their identity, get back on track, like you mentioned, if they want to make a trip back to Omaha. Thank you as always for joining us, Clark. Always great insight. And when we return, March Madness might be over, but we're still caught in the fever of it all. Just a few weeks after both championship games. Carter Yates will break them down for us up next. Joining me now to talk men's and women's basketball is Carter Yates. Carter, thanks as always for being here.
Hey, happy to be here, Tommy. He's kicking off 24/7 right now on this Monday. Great time to talk some sports.
No doubt about it. And let's start with the men's bracket first in college basketball. This championship game was a toss-up from the start, but North Carolina initially looked like they were going to start running away with this at the start until Kansas comes back in the second half. The biggest comeback ever in a championship game, by the way. How'd they do it?
Well, it's funny. Kansas was almost the forgotten one seed heading into the Final Four. All eyes were on the Duke-UNC game with Kansas and Villanova as the distinct undercard. Kansas came into the Final Four and hadn't yet put together a full game of dominant basketball. And guess what? They still didn't do that in the championship game. They went into halftime down 15 points to North Carolina, a team that was coming off an emotional high after beating their arch-rival Duke in the semis to send Coach K into retirement. But this game was eerily similar to their Elite Eight game against Miami. In that contest, Kansas went into the half down 6 points before they stormed back to take a 26-point lead and eventually the win. The biggest takeaway I have from watching Kansas this season is the balance they have. I don't know if they have any one player aside from maybe Ochai Agbaji that is a surefire NBA prospect, but they are all excellent college players. 5 Kansas players scored double-digit figures against UNC, and my pick for the MVP of the game is senior center David McCormick. He had a double-double with 15 points and 10 rebounds, and his plus-minus rating for the game was plus 16. He also came up big for the Jayhawks when he hit a sky hook over Brady Manick with 22 seconds left to put his team up by 3 points, and that was the end score of the game. McCormick was integral in limiting North Carolina center Armando Bacot's production from the floor. Yes, Bacot had 15 rebounds and 15 points, but he shot a measly 3 for 13 from the field, largely in part because of the great defense from McCormick. Another guy I want to highlight from this game is Kansas point guard Remy Martin. Martin was the preseason Big 12 Player of the Year, but suffered from knee injuries this season and some poor shooting bouts that limited his production. He went 2 months without scoring in double figures, but he was the most outstanding player in his region for the NCAA tournament. He had some clutch shots in the championship game. Kansas fans might have written off Martin during the season, but his performance in the NCAA tournament is exactly why he was the #1 transfer on the market, and that's why you bring him into the fold.
And Martin, just pulling from anywhere on the court with absolutely no fear. That was a really big X factor in that second half for Kansas. Let's move over now to the women's bracket. It was hard not to pick UConn heading into this game, considering they've won all 11 championships they've played in prior to this game, but South Carolina came out and they made a statement. How did the Gamecocks pull this off? And does Dawn Staley have a dynasty on her hands?
Oh, I think, yes, Dawn Staley does have a dynasty on her hands. The men's game was back and forth with massive lead switches and changes, but the women's game will pop up if you search domination in the dictionary. South Carolina won their tournament games by an average of 23 points, and it wasn't much different in the championship game when they beat UConn 64-49. The Gamecocks set the tone right from the opening tip, taking a commanding 22-8 lead at the end of the first quarter. They made a living in the paint against UConn, netting 22 second chance points compared to UConn's 5, and getting 32 points in the paint compared to UConn's 26. The biggest contributor in the paint was junior forward Aaliyah Boston for South Carolina, who had 11 points and 16 rebounds. Destiny Henderson, the Gamecock senior guard, truly saved her best performance for the presumptive last game of her career. Not only did she get a career-high 26 points to pace South Carolina in scoring, but she also ensured UConn didn't grab any much-needed momentum. The Huskies actually got the game to a 43-37 mark, but Henderson went on a 7-point scoring run by herself at the end of the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter to essentially ice the game away. For South Carolina and their head coach Dawn Staley, it's a historic season marked by a program record for most wins in school history with 35. Also, an interesting stat to note about South Carolina's swarming defense that has become, a team trademark under Staley. The championship game marked the 47th consecutive game that South Carolina has held the opposing team under their season scoring average. On the flip side for UConn, this was their first loss in 12 NCAA championship games, but head coach Gina Auriemma had another great season guiding UConn through a lot of injuries and illnesses. Different players on their team seemingly had them using a different starting lineup every night. Also saw star player Paige Beckers missed almost 3 months of action and still made it to the championship.
Absolutely, and it's difficult to win when one of your best players like Beckers is out, but nonetheless, Dawn Staley's team was, as you mentioned, just way, way, way too good for UConn this time around. The hype coming into this year's tournament was a bit amplified compared to years past. It was the first one where the fans were back in the stands at full capacity, but there were still a lot of folks watching from home, which set new viewing records, especially in the women's tournament, which is always great to see. What went into this increased level of viewership?
So the 2022 Women's Championship had 4.85 million viewers on ESPN. That made it the most watched college basketball game, men or women, since 2008. Viewership was up 30% this year from just 2 years ago in 2019. So we talked about Paige Beckers, the UConn star. She's also a bona fide star in the social media game. She has 968,000 followers on Instagram, 65,000 followers on Twitter, and is also a TikTok star. And this year's Sweet 16, she had the highest NIL earning potential for men and women still playing in the tournament. The women's game has seen a meteoric rise in popularity over the last few years, and they are now getting their games on ESPN's main channels and delivering huge ratings results. And while NIL was thought at first to possibly just help, men's football and basketball players, Paige Beckers is proving that female athletes have the same, if not even a bigger platform sometimes to generate revenue and make an impact on the next generation. And keep in mind, this is all only a year removed from when the women at the NCAA tournament had to call out the NCAA for the weight room disparities that they had between them and the men. The NCAA at that time apologized and then unveiled a new weight room. And I think the NCAA is starting to head in the right direction now, and women's basketball is taking on increased popularity nationwide. And it's as a result of these breathtaking personalities in women's college basketball and the newfound reach they have with social media and the NIL opportunities.
I don't think I could have said it any better. That was spot on. Thank you as always for coming out, Carter. Up next, after a grueling lockout, baseball is finally back as the MLB opened the season last Thursday. That and more after this. Welcome back into College Press Box. MLB analyst Jason Kinander now joins us to talk about the MLB's opening day. Jason, we weren't sure if there would be one this year, but it seems like the baseball gods have smiled upon us.
Well, thank you very much, Tommy. And you're right, there was plenty of doubt throughout the winter and into the spring that there wouldn't even be a Major League Baseball season. But against all odds, the players and the owners settled their differences last month, agreeing to a collective bargaining agreement to end a 3-month lockout. 1 month later, here we are. The 2022 Major League Baseball season began over the weekend with all 30 teams in action opening their seasons on Thursday and Friday. Opening day featured the usual tape measure shots, dominant gems on the mound, and walk-off thrillers signifying baseball's official return. Here are a couple of opening day games that stood out amongst the rest. We begin in Kansas City. Royals and Guardians scoreless in the 4th inning until Jose Ramirez gets Cleveland on the board with this RBI double sliding safely into second base. The Royals would respond quickly as Nicky Lopez tags a ball into the left field gap for a run-scoring double of his own. That would knot the game at 1, a score that would hold into the 6th inning when Jake Brents carves up Yu Chang, stranding the bases loaded and extinguishing the fire. All 3 runners left on base, the inning over, and the tie retained. The tie would hold into the 8th inning, setting the stage for baseball's top prospect, Bobby Witt Jr., in his Major League debut, looking for his first knock, and he would get it. Bobby Witt drilling a ball into left field, down for a double. The run scores. It's 2-1 Royals. Witt with his first Major League knock, RBI, and the Royals would end up winning 3-1 down to the desert, where the Padres get on the board with a run-scoring walk of all things. Madison Bumgarner would have a little bit of better luck here for the Diamondbacks. Next batter, Will Myers. What you looking at? Down looking to strand the bases loaded. 4th inning, new pitcher. The Padres wouldn't stop adding as Austin Nola puts a ball under the glove of the second baseman, expanding the lead to 2-1 for San Diego. Yu Darvish looked amazing in this game for the Padres, firing 6 no-hit innings, finished off with this pop out to second base. Although Darvish's night would end here. New pitchers Tim Hill, he is immediately greeted with a base knock by Pavin Smith to break up the no-hitter. The Diamondbacks would not stop at one hit. They would not stop at one run. Seth Beer would blast one to right field, sending it into the seats, giving baseball's worst team in 2021 a walk-off winner on the first night of the 22 season. Seth Beer with a bomb for the Snakes, sending everyone home happy in the desert. From the desert to Detroit. Friday morning, Chi Sox getting it going early. Here's an Eloy Jimenez base knock to give the White Sox a lead. AJ Pollock adding on, the newly acquired right fielder, puts one into right. 2-0 White Sox. They would expand this lead to 3-1 in the 8th inning, where Miguel Cabrera, big moment for Miggy, vintage Miggy, drops a base hit in front of Luis Robert. Both runs score. Game is tied at 3 off of all-star closer Liam Hendricks. But the White Sox would not be tied for long. Here is Andrew Vaughn stepping in, calm and composed, and stepping out with a bomb to left field, make that, giving the White Sox a 4-3 lead. Tough to keep that ball in the ballpark as a whole. White Sox regaining the lead that they just coughed up moments ago. But it wouldn't be that fun for the White Sox. Eric Haas says, whatever you can do, I can do better. Blasts one of his own to left field. The game is tied almost instantly for Detroit. Austin Meadows would step to the plate, drill a triple with 2 outs in the 9th, setting up this moment for Javier Baez. Blasts one out to right. AJ Pollock thinks he has it, doesn't. Oh, he's got it. We're going to extra innings, or are we? Upon review, the ball would hit the wall before it landed in Pollock's glove, giving Baez a walk-off hit. The Tigers a come-from-behind win in the first game of the MLB season.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the MLB season started off with some fireworks too. Thank you for joining us, Jason. And when we return, we'll take a look at the last week in Texas sports. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from the past week in Texas sports. It's not really hard to find a starting spot for this segment, as it doesn't get any bigger than this. Texas men's golf alumnus Scotty Scheffler took home the green jacket this weekend at Augusta National, winning the 2022 Masters Tournament. Scheffler came into the tournament red hot, as he was ranked the best men's golfer in the world and showed it over the course of the 4 days. He finished 10 under par, 3 strokes better than the runner-up Rory McIlroy. Scheffler is now the 3rd golfer in Longhorn history to don the green jacket, joining Ben Crenshaw, who won the tournament twice in 1984 and 1995, and Jordan Spieth most recently back in 2015. Next up, the Texas baseball team announced on Saturday that former pitcher Taylor Jungmann will have his number 26 retired during the 2023 season. Jungmann sported the burnt orange from 2009 to 2011, where he was named a 2-time All-American and won the 2011 Dick Howser Trophy, awarded to the best player in college baseball. Jungmann's legacy already resides strongly in the record books of Texas, where he is 6th all-time in innings pitched, strikeouts, and opposing batting average, 7th in ERA, and 10th in wins. His jersey will be the 8th one to be retired by the baseball program, joining the likes of Roger Clemens and Hudson Street. Up next, Texas swimming and diving legend Brian Jones was inducted into the Texas Swimming and Diving Hall of Fame. Last Friday, Jones swam for the Longhorns from 1997 to 2000, specializing in the butterfly, where he was the team captain for the 2000 Texas National Championship team. In his 4 years, he was a 15-time Big 12 champion, 5-time NCAA champion, and 21-time All-American. He is the 28th Longhorn to be inducted into the Texas Swimming and Diving Hall of Fame. Next up, the number 1 ranked Texas rowing team brought home a big victory against number 6 Michigan in Ann Arbor on Saturday. The Longhorn boats won 3 out of the 4 races against the 2-time defending Big 12 champions and have now beat the Wolverines in back-to-back seasons. The Longhorn victories came in both of the 8 races, while winning the first 4 but dropping the second 4 to Michigan. Texas heads to New Jersey next Saturday to face off against number 5 Princeton and number 13 Rutgers on Lake Carnegie. Let's take a look now what we have going on this coming week in Texas sports. Tomorrow evening, baseball hosts Stephen F. Austin at the Dish. First pitch set for 6:30, and you can watch that on Longhorn Network. Loaded schedule on Thursday. Baseball heads to Kansas State to continue Big 12 play. Game 1 of the series starts at 6 on ESPN+. Men's tennis travels to Norman to take on Oklahoma, and the softball team hosts the #1 ranked Sooners. Both of those events start at 6 p.m. You can watch softball on Longhorn Network. Finally, volleyball has their second spring game against Baylor at home. That'll begin at 8 p.m. on Friday. And then both baseball and softball have Game 2 of their series against Kansas and Oklahoma, respectively, on Friday. Both of them first pitches at 6 p.m. You can watch baseball on ESPN+ and softball on Longhorn Network. Saturday is another full slate of Longhorn sports. Men's tennis heads to Oklahoma State for a match starting at noon. Softball closes out their series with Oklahoma at 1 on Longhorn Network. Women's tennis travels to Waco to take on Baylor at 2 p.m. Baseball finishes their series against Kansas State at 4 p.m. on ESPN+. And volleyball wraps up spring games in Fort Worth against TCU starting at 4 p.m. That'll wrap things up for this week's episode of College Press Box. Make sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesday and the 1-0 Sports Show on Friday. And hey, folks, this is a special week here at TSTV because we have 24/7 going on. We will be live 24 hours, all 7 days of the week, and it's all to support student voices. So make sure if you have some time and if you enjoy shows like this one tonight, to go and donate to us so we can produce even better shows and keep giving you guys the content that you enjoy. For that and all the TSTV crew here, I'm Tommy Yarrish, signing off from Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us, and have a good night.